Before starting this video, I'd like to thank you all for 200 subscribers. It really means a lot to me and I'm super excited to make more videos in the future. Thank you so much for your support. Welcome back to Vids Made Simple. If you haven't subscribed to my channel already, please press the subscribe button and the bell icon nearby to get notified as soon as I upload a new video. So in this video we're going to be talking about aminoglycosides. So aminoglycosides belongs to a group of antibiotics which inhibits protein synthesis in the bacteria, and they're mainly active against aerobic gram-negative bacteria. So watch this video fully in order to know all the things you must know about aminoglycosides. So aminoglycosides includes drugs such as streptomycin, neomycin, kanamycin, amikacin, gentamicin, and tobramycin. How do they act? They are irreversible inhibitors of protein synthesis. So they inhibit the protein synthesis in the bacteria, and that's obviously not a good thing for the bacteria. So without adequate proteins, the bacteria are going to die. They cross the cell wall of the bacteria by passive diffusion into the porine channels. As you can see in this picture right here, the porine channels are the green channels which are present over here. So aminoglycosides can passively diffuse through these channels to reach a space which is present between the cell wall and the cell membrane, which is periplasm. So once they reach the periplasm, they need to cross the cell membrane to enter into the cytoplasm. They cross the cell membrane by active transport, which is actually an oxygen dependent process. So once they reach the periplasm, the process which I've seen in the previous slide, they need to cross the cell membrane to reach the cytoplasm. That actually requires energy. In addition to energy, they also require oxygen for this process to take place. That's why aminoglycosides are active only against aerobic bacteria, because anaerobic bacteria will not have the oxygen consumption facility. So the aminoglycosides are not active against anaerobic bacteria. They bind to 30 subunit of ribosomes. So once they reach the cytoplasm, they bind to the ribosomes, especially the 30 subunit of the ribosome. As you can see here, this is the complex which is actually involved in protein synthesis. So there are two subunits of ribosomes. The one at the top is a 50S subunit, and the one which is below is 30S subunit. And the long strand which you see here is actually a messenger RNA, also known as mRNA. So you can see the tRNA carrying amino acids, and the peptide chain is growing here, and protein synthesis is taking place here. So aminoglycosides comes and they act right over here, which is marked by the arrow. They act on the 30th subunit of the ribosomes, and they inhibit protein synthesis in the bacteria. That's how they act. Pharmacokinetics. These drugs are most commonly given intravenously or intramuscularly. The half-life of these drugs is about 2 to 3 hours, and they have a characteristic property which is known as post-antibiotic effect, which means even after the half-life of this drug is over, these drugs are going to have their effect lasting for a much more time, and that's a unique feature of aminoglycosides, which is known as post-antibiotic effect. One more property of this drug is concentration dependent killing, which means a single large dose given once in the morning can produce effective antibiotic effect. So they're effective as once daily dosing. So it's better to give a drug as once daily dosage, right, compared to twice or thrice daily dosage, because the patient may tend to forget to take a drug once or twice a day. So if you're going to give them as just a once daily regimen, the chances of them forgetting to take the drug is comparatively less. So aminoglycosides can be given as a single large dose once daily. So that's a plus. So synergism. This is a property which actually means that the action of one antibiotic is potentiated or increased by the action by addition of one more antibiotic. Now I'll simplify this with an example. If you're gonna treat a patient with aminoglycosides and beta-lactam antibiotic combination, there's gonna be better effect. That's because there's gonna be increased permeability of the cell wall. As you all know, beta-lactam antibiotics such as penicillin and cephalosporins are going to inhibit the cell wall synthesis in the bacteria. So what happens after that? If the cell wall is not synthesized properly, there will be increased permeability of the cell wall, so that aminoglycosides can penetrate the bacteria easily, and there's going to be better action of aminoglycosides. This is a classical example of synergism. Resistance. Resistance is a way by which the bacteria is able to fight the antibiotic. So there are three main mechanisms by which the bacteria show resistance to aminoglycosides. The first one is by production of an enzyme which is known as transferase, which can inactivate aminoglycosides. The second way is by impaired entry of aminoglycosides. So the bacteria can impair the entry of aminoglycosides into them. That is one of a protective mechanism. The third step is by mutation of receptor on the 30th ribosomal subunit. So there is actually a receptor which is present on the 30th subunit of ribosomes, on which the aminoglycosides are going to bind to and carry out their effect. So if there's going to be mutation of the receptor on the 30th subunit of ribosomes, the aminoglycosides cannot bind to that subunit. So that is one of the way by which the bacteria develop resistance to aminoglycosides. The adverse effects or the toxicity of these drugs. First of all, most commonly they are ototoxic drugs, which means they're going to affect the ear. As you all know, the ear has two components, the cochlea and the vestibule. The cochlea is associated with hearing and the vestibule is associated with balance. The aminoglycosides which most commonly affects the cochlea are amikacin and kanamycin. Okay, so amikacin and kanamycin most commonly affects the cochlea and they cause hearing loss. Whereas gentamicin and tobramycin are vestibulotoxic, which means they affect the vestibule component of the ear, which is affected, which is linked to balance. So if they're going to affect the vestibule, the patient's going to have balance symptoms, which means they'll lack balance and they're going to have symptoms like that. One more important toxicity of aminoglycosides is nephrotoxicity. This is usually reversible with most of the drugs, but if the patient already has features of renal failure or any other renal disease, these are going to be worse for the patient. So you need to consider this toxicity if you're going to give aminoglycosides to a patient of kidney disease, or if you're going to extend the duration of treatment of a patient with aminoglycosides. For example, if you're going to treat a patient with aminoglycosides for about more than 5 days, we have to monitor the drug levels of aminoglycosides in the patient's blood to avoid nephrotoxicity. One more adverse effect which is not so common is neuromuscular blockade. So the common uses of aminoglycosides can be used in infective endocarditis, tuberculosis where streptomycin is commonly used, and sepsis. It can also be used in various infections which are caused by Arabic gram-negative bacteria. So if you like my work and if you want me to make more videos like that, please donate me on Patreon. The link is given in the description of this video. If you like this video, please leave a like and comment below and share this video to your friends and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Thank you.